Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here with Billy Derrick. Our show's presented by the Wash House, and I think the Wash House is getting their money's worth thus far. Vanderbilt beats Virginia Tech 80-64 on the road, and Billy, not a great team that Vanderbilt played. I think will be one of the worst teams in the ACC when it's all said and done. A team that was on a 4-game losing streak coming in, but as Mark Byington said, you learn a lot about your team when you go on the road, and I think Vanderbilt learned a lot of things about itself tonight. I thought Vanderbilt was in its purest form tonight. It didn't have a crowd to pump it up, and I think you saw some spurts of bad play, but Vanderbilt finds a way to go and win this game pretty decisively. I think that should help it a little bit in the numbers, although Virginia Tech is not a team that is great in the numbers right now. I think Vanderbilt showed a lot of things that you like tonight. Its guards, its guard, I guess, quintuple of Grant Huffman, Tyler Tanner, A.J. Hoggard, M.J. Collins, and Jason Edwards combined for 57 points. Edwards led the way with 19, and M.J. Collins in his return to Blacksburg goes for 15 points, all of which were in the first half, and really sparked Vanderbilt. But, Billy, I think today the theme of the day is Vanderbilt knows it's a work in progress, but in the midst of being a work in progress is finding ways to win, and I think tonight was one of its more impressive ones, not because of the team it played, but because of going on the road and not having its best and finding a way to win by nearly 15.
Is quad 3 win, Joey?
It would be quad 4 if the season ended today. I think it gets bumped up as we go, though.
Okay, quad 4. Anyway, it's an ACC team, and arguably maybe the worst ACC team, and at least at the bottom of the ACC. But this is a game that I don't think Vanderbilt wins last year, and we saw a Boston College team come into Nashville last year. That was a Boston College team that was not even top of the pack in the ACC last year, coming to Nashville and beat Vanderbilt. That's what you have to do. And Vanderbilt may not be a tournament team right now. They may not look like a tournament team, but they're doing the things at the base level that you have to do, to at least take the steps to get to that point. If you're in the SEC, and I think it's interesting. Vanderbilt's now 66th in KenPom. That's 15th out of SEC teams still. I mean, it just tells you how good the SEC is right now. Jason Edwards, 19 points tonight. He's the most consistent player on this team. I think night in, night out, you can rely on Jason Edwards to get you almost at least 15. I don't know what he's averaging right now, Joey, but I mean, he's really consistent. They held Virginia Tech, as you tweeted out, 38% shooting. This defense is something that I think is, at least so far, able to keep this team in games. This is an opportunistic defense. I don't think you look at this defense and say, man, they're stout. That this is a great defense among the SEC teams, but they're opportunistic. And guys like Huffman and Tanner, they create opportunities. I mean, Huffman had a couple of huge defensive plays, halfway through that second half that catapulted this team, and he's been doing that. Really, he did that a lot in Charleston, and guys like Huffman and Tanner, and even MJ Collins too. I know Collins had a quiet second half, but defensively, this team just creates, and I think that is something that we haven't been able to say, especially since you've been covering Vanderbilt basketball. Even in that good fourth year under Stackhouse, that defense still wasn't great. That they were just kind of they could be a dynamic offense at times, but when you've got a defense that can create for your team, it's dangerous. And I think Byington knows that. And that was something we talked about before he even came to Vanderbilt, that, you throw on the tape of him at James Madison, and their defense really creates, and that's something you can scoff over. But, whether it's nickel or carry or specifically Huffman, this team just creates on defense. And to win 80-64 against, again, it's a Virginia Tech team that's not very good, but you saw Tennessee last night take care of business against Syracuse and win by, what was that, almost 30? I mean, it's what you have to do, right? And you go on the road. It wasn't a great crowd, of course, and it's a quad 4 win, but, you spread it around again. It's kind of funny looking at the stats, Joey. I don't think there was a single starter in double figures for Vanderbilt. Looking at the stats, you had Huffman had 9 points, Nickel had 6, McLaughlin had 6, Hoggard and Magnon both had 5 apiece. you just never know. And I caught a good piece in the last few minutes or so on the broadcast talking about this team and the group Byington's assembled. And I forget who the announcer was, but he said this group as a whole just feels like they fit together. There's not an all-conference performer, most likely, but they fit together. And that's a credit to Mark Byington and what he's been able to do with this group. But tonight was another example of what they can be and what they can do. I don't think they were at their best tonight, Joey, which I think is, again, a sign that, okay, what can this team look like when they are at their best? But they were still able to get a double-digit, fairly convincing win, again, against a bad team. But still, they took care of business, and that's what matters at this point in the season. There's a lot of SEC teams taking care of business against inferior opponents, and Vanderbilt's one of them right now, when last year they weren't.
Yeah, I think the opportunistic piece is good, and I think them as a whole, not only defensively, they are an opportunistic group. Tonight they had 28 points created off of Virginia Tech turnovers, and Virginia Tech is not a team that is lauded for its shot making, obviously, but Vanderbilt being able to hold it under 40% from the field and under 30% from three, I think is a good thing too. Like we said, they're disruptive, they're opportunistic, all the things along those lines. And I think offensively they have a little bit of an edge to them too, and some of their guys do as well, which I think you saw tonight with MJ Collins and you saw with Jason Edwards too. Like those guys are ready for road environments, ready for moments like that. And I think you look at tonight and say, man, they weren't their best. They were far from it. And you see some concerning trends. The rebounding is one of them, but also they're finding ways to win. They're 8-1, and I think there's only so much you can complain about right now. I think the rebounding is probably the biggest thing. They were out rebounded by 10 tonight, gave up, I think, 16 offensive boards, and that's a problem, Billy. They've been out rebounded in 6 of their last 7 games, but a lot of that is not on their sides. I think a lot of that is fundamentally sound things. Drake out rebounded them, and Drake's a smaller team than they are. Byington talked post game today about how their guards aren't crashing enough, things along those lines. So things are going to have to be fixed. But my take right now is they're doing a lot of overwhelmingly positive things, and that's the story right now. And I think tonight, rather than looking at the story as Virginia Tech is terrible and Virginia Tech's a team that isn't going to go anywhere and is probably going to tank your metrics, you look at it and say, man, they avoided the bad loss, and they did enough good things to leave you encouraged coming out of it and make the game Sunday against TCU meaningful and give you a chance to go 2-0 on the road. I think that's a big thing, like Byington said. And we mentioned earlier, you learn a lot about yourself on the road. Vanderbilt learned tonight, if it didn't already know, that it's pretty flawed, but it learned that even with that, it's a guards game, and its guards came to play tonight. And I think that's the story, and the story is they do something that they only did once last year and went on the road and do it against a Power 5 team, Billy.
Yeah, and they controlled the game, Joey. They led for 34 minutes of this game, and I say control the game. A lot of times when you control a basketball game, you're scoring in the paint, and you're sort of manhandling the other team. They had 36 points in the paint. Virginia Tech had 28, but still to have 36 points in the paint, I thought was impressive. 49 bench points. And it's interesting, you look at the stat line. Edwards came off the bench, which, he's going to start a lot of games this year, but coming off the bench with 19, again, it is impressive. You look at his minutes, 21 minutes. I mean, that 19 points in 21 minutes is impressive for anybody. MJ Collins hit a few big threes early in that first half, had 15. So, when you're getting double figures from MJ Collins and a few threes from him, that's when you're seeing this team win games, I think. I mean, I think that could be a common theme, because that's not going to be a night in, night out thing from MJ Collins. Nickel to me, Joey, is an X factor. And I know they won tonight, but he was 2 of 7 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3, only had 6 points, in 26 minutes. I think in SEC play, you're going to need some more consistent play from Nickel. Huffman's been consistent, but you're not looking at him to score. 9 points out of Huffman, that's really solid. I think Nickel's probably gonna have to at least double. Like if Nickel's in double figures, I think you're sitting pretty. And Hogard, Hogard struggled tonight in 28 minutes, only 5 points, 2 of 7 from the field. Hogard and Nickel have to step up, and they've got to be better, and I think they know that. Same with McLaughlin too. But at the same time, you've got Edwards, you've got Collins, you've got Tanner. Carey didn't even have that good of a night, and this team won convincingly, Joey. Like I think there's still so much out there for this team that, you look at it and you go, okay, Hogard, Nickel, and Carey all had not their best nights, but you still had Collins and what's his name? Edwards. I always forget about Jason Edwards. You still had Collins and Edwards step up and have big nights for this team. So that's a good thing. But in SEC play, as you know, Joey, you're going to have more of a group team effort tonight come through. But at the same time, maybe in SEC play, we see this team be able to have some off nights from Hogard and Nickel and still be able to win games. But the SEC is the SEC. So that's what I look at. I think Nickel's got to be better and more consistent. I think he knows that, and this team knows that. But also Hogard. I don't know how many SEC games you're going to win with Hogard and Nickel scoring a combined 11 points.
Yeah, we got to wrap up in a sec. My phone, shockingly, is low on battery. But, Billy, I'm going to leave us with a couple things. Nickel's slump has been peculiar to me. He's such a confident guy with such an edge, and I've almost seen that missing the last couple of games, and 4 of the last 5, he's fallen short of double figures. The only good one he had was the Seton Hall game. I think 2 guys I want to note tonight, and you mentioned Jalen Carey didn't have a great game. I think he was really poor on the glass, and that's something that's got to be resolved. But, man, was he good in the second half, getting into the low post and getting a bucket when they needed it. That's what they need him to do. They don't need him to score 13 points a night. He's got to be a 6-point scorer on 3-for-3 shooting like he was tonight and a half. That was a great half for him offensively, and I think that's what they need. And then Tyler Tanner's floor game is really coming along too. He put it on the floor to get a floater, cut through the lane a little bit. We saw him at BA do just about everything but defend, and now he's defending. He's a 3-and-D guy, and you're starting to see a little bit of the skill set you saw offensively from him there. So I liked what I saw from those two, especially Carey in the second half, more so than the first half. But they got to clean up the rebounding. I thought there were some spurts of poor offensive play, some poor shots taken that Byington kind of mentioned. He actually said an interesting thing, like when they were in front of the Vanderbilt bench, he was able to control the offense more and run more stuff, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't really heard a coach admit to that. But, Billy, overall, I think a positive night for Vanderbilt basketball, and one that doesn't tank their metrics, one that probably helps them in the metrics. And I think the biggest thing is you just go on the road and win a game against a Power 5 team. That, I think, in itself is a good enough thing to consider it a good night, and doing it by dang near 15 points is also a resounding positive. So, Billy, go ahead. Quick last word before my
one more note. Keep an eye on Grant Huffman, possibly concussed. He got banged up tonight in that game, so keep an eye on a Grant Huffman concussion for that TCU game.
Gotcha. And then one more thing, Chris Magnon as well, I thought was really disruptive, had a really good night defensively. But overall, the story, more so than any individual guy, and they've got to get better out of Hogard and Nickel particularly. They're doing a lot of good things, and their record has shown that. And if they leave non-conference play with 1 or 2 losses, which it looks like they're set up to do right now, I think they're in a pretty good spot going into SEC play, where they only have to win 8 or 9 games to get to the NCAA tournament. And that's a breath of fresh air for this program. And doing what they did tonight, I think, is a breath of fresh air as well. So, Billy, thanks for joining me. We'll see how long the battery lasts for the TCU post game, but tonight a little bit short-lived. But I guess we're around our normal time anyway. I appreciate you joining me, and good win for Vandy hoops, like they've had a lot over the last couple weeks.